What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. James Hancock here, back to review episode 2 of the new Starz show Counterpart, an episode called Birds of a Feather. I know technically the episode's not supposed to air until this evening, but I found out that if you have a Starz subscription to the app, you can actually get the episode much earlier. I'm not quite sure when the episodes post, which leads me to a little bit of interesting current events here in New York. Apparently, there's a little bit of a pissing contest here in New York between Starz and a company called Altice USA or Altice USA. I'm just now getting up to speed on the story, so it's probably very reckless for me to offer an opinion on it, but this is the internet after all, and offering opinions on subjects where we have incomplete information is what we're all about. But apparently Starz was suddenly dropped on January 1st for all the subscribers here in New York, and they were offered very little warning and are only now just being offered some refunds. Starz is making the case that randomly dropping their channel, where Altice USA claims there's low viewership, really prevents audience members and viewers around the city of New York from discovering new shows like Counterpart. Shows like Counterpart are what drive subscriber growth for a platform like Starz. But the dispute has become so heated that they've actually filed petitions with the FCC, so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. In any event, how it affects me is I basically now finally bit the bullet and got a Starz subscription, which obviously gives me access to shows like American Gods and a bunch of other cool stuff. It's incredible just how much the Starz brand has changed in recent years. About 10 years ago, I always thought of Starz as that company that showed movies in really crummy formats on other people's platforms. They always seemed to be in pan and scan as opposed to widescreen with really poor image quality, and now all of a sudden they're this premium brand offering all this cool new stuff. But as long as they keep cranking out stuff like Counterpart, I will remain a loyal subscriber, because after watching episode 2, it has become abundantly clear that Counterpart is the kind of unpretentious, fun, simple genre entertainment that I really find myself drawn to. Whether it has enough twists and turns and peaks and valleys to warrant covering the show on an episode-by-episode basis remains to be seen. It might be one of those shows where it's better on this channel just to tackle one season at a time, but I am eagerly looking forward to following this on a weekly basis over the next few months. And in a rare case of internet harmony, this is one of those rare shows or movies where the critics and the audiences largely seem to agree. I was looking on Rotten Tomatoes earlier and I saw that when it comes to critics, the show is right now sitting at 100%, and with audience members, it's sitting at 88%. What I've been noticing over the last few months is an increasing split between audience members and critics. It seems like critics oftentimes are a little bit out of step with general viewers, where you have a movie that'll get a 95% rating, and then the audience will rate it at 50, as was the case with The Last Jedi. Or you'll have a situation like with Bright, where critics absolutely destroy it, but audiences on the whole really seem to enjoy it. So much so that it actually really helped drive subscriber growth with Netflix last quarter. It's easy to see why critics and audience members are in total agreement on Counterpart, because J.K. Simmons just makes it a hell of a lot of fun to watch. When he's playing two sides essentially of the same person, watching their interactions, it's just an absolute showcase for his versatility and his depth and his range as an actor. But as we saw in episode 2, he's not the only actor who's going to be given this opportunity to act opposite of themselves. So that's about as far as I can go before I get into any spoilers. So I'll just say this show is very solid, it's very reliable, it's very entertaining. I'm definitely going to be sticking with it through season 1, but with all that aside, let's get into some spoilers with a recap of episode 2. So episode 2 is very solid, it was very entertaining, but what it lacked was the fresh novelty that episode 1 enjoyed. As soon as I was presented with the overall concept that we're in a world where 30 years ago something happened, where there are now doorways between two mirror image universes, where as time goes by, they resemble each other less and less, especially when it comes to this mysterious UN organization that all these characters work for, where, for lack of a better word, it just seems darker on the other side from our own reality. It's much more prone to really bloody inter-office politics, and it's a lot more conspiratorial, much more shadowy. So much so that the dark version of Howard, I don't know what the proper way to describe these characters are, because obviously they're both Howard Silk, but there's one Howard Silk who's really innocent and sweet, and there's one Howard Silk who's totally hardcore, very resourceful, a total killer. I'm just going to call him Hardcore Howard because I don't have another way of referring to him. In any case, Hardcore Howard has a sit-down with his wife Emily, played by the great Olivia Williams, who I've always loved since I saw her in Rushmore. And we see there's an alarming lack of trust between these two, so much so that she even brings a retrieval team to pick him up to ask him questions about why he's going over to the other side so frequently. And we get this great scene where he's walking out to the car and you see him put in these earplugs. You know shit's about to go down, and as soon as the doors are closed, just pop, 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 he takes them all out. What's interesting is that Emily learns the following day that there are no official records of the order to retrieve Howard, so clearly there are factions within factions in their agency who are not sharing information and are after Howard for their own reasons. We also get the arrival of a character played by Stephen Ray, an actor I've always really admired. His character's name is Alexander Pope, and he's a kind of a sickly, dying man who offers a lot of information to Howard and a lot of insights about how to handle this conspiracy that seems to be forming against him. But the plot thickens this episode when Hardcore Howard gets the actual real name of the assassin Baldwin back in the other reality. Her name is Nadia, and whereas the Baldwin we know is an absolutely ruthless, graceful, cunning, shadowy assassin figure, Nadia in the nice universe is actually a virtuoso musician who specializes in the violin. And much like our two Howards that we know and love, they share a common DNA, they share a common background, and they share a common trauma of the manner in which their father died. But they've both applied their skills and their attributes in very different ways. They're both very graceful, they're both very skillful, but one's a killer and one's an artist. Now, the actress who plays Baldwin and Nadia, I don't quite know how to pronounce her name. Her name is Sarah Seriaccio. I'm assuming that maybe that's Italian. I'm a big dumb American. I do not have an ear for other languages. The reason the two Howards want to study the nice version of her is that if they can learn enough about her background, it might clue them into the whereabouts of the assassin Baldwin. So it basically becomes a race. Can Hardcore Howard extract enough information from Baldwin in order for them to hunt down the wounded Baldwin before Baldwin figures out what they're up to and decides to try and remove Nadia from the chessboard? For people who enjoy a little sex and nudity in their entertainment, Sarah Seriaccio is nice enough to remove her top in this episode, which was a nice little thrill that I did not expect. But the big climax of this episode is when Baldwin arrives at this bar where Howard has drugged Nadia and is trying to extract information from her. And for fans of action, it's an absolute joy to watch Baldwin do her thing because she's so quick and she's so silent. Whether it was a knife or a gun, whatever the case might be, she's always hacking people's throats. But she's also really clever and resourceful. She calls the cops ahead of time and says that there are dead men and a girl being held against her will. And when those cops arrive, they pull Nadia out of her conversation with Howard, and immediately Baldwin takes out the cops and runs away with Nadia. We get an interesting situation where Nadia and Baldwin have a little bit of a one-on-one. However, this big, giant, sloppy shootout unfolds, and as a result, Nadia gets caught in the crossfire. Hardcore Howard is justifiably pissed about the sloppiness, and he basically tells the nice, soft, and fuzzy version of Howard that what he needs to do is get him transferred to a different department in strategy where he can spy on his own agency and provide Howard with the information he needs to have more control over their operations. Howard's #1 goal is to make sure that Baldwin is caught before she takes out any more people, but he's unable to do so with an organization that is so disorganized. So all around, I was thoroughly entertained. I would say the show's not necessarily awe-inspiringly sensational, but it is a very cool, effective genre piece. And I'm looking forward to learning more about this very fragile piece that Pope and Emily are talking about over on the dark side of this universe. So I hope you enjoyed my little recap and review. Please consider giving my channel a subscribe. If you have any thoughts on the episode, definitely give me a shout in the comments below, or you can always hunt me down on Twitter at Colbrax. I'm an absolute zombie over there. But I hope everyone has a great upcoming week, and I'll be back at y'all in the very near future to review the next episode of Star Trek. So long.